I don't listen to that many podcasts. I know they're the new thing, and I know this one is legendary.
Now we're talking, right? That's how we want to be introducing this podcast every single week. It's taken us 100 episodes to manage to get somebody to say something nice about the podcast, and then in a way that's quite out of context, edit it and make it sound like they weren't being a little bit sarcastic. But we will take it. Thank you for downloading episode 100 of Midnight Chats. It's hard to know whether Greg or I thought we'd get to 100 episodes. In many ways, I think we probably did, because we're very stubborn people and we tend to carry on making things regardless of the demand for it. But I am happy to say that we have had lots of listeners and lots of incredible guests on this podcast, and far more than we were ever planning on having or hoping to have. So thank you to everyone that has ever been on Midnight Chats, and to you for listening. Even if this is your very first time here, there are all these other episodes that you can go back and explore. But if you're only here for Jarvis Cocker, that's completely understandable. A great guest for us to have to mark 100 episodes. I spoke to Jarvis, when was it? It was 2 days after his birthday, I think, is what I say in the recording. So it was in September time, end of September time, and we had a great chat over Zoom. Thank you to Jarvis, not just for coming on, but for recording his voice in such an incredible quality. He had a great recorder, so this episode I think sounds particularly good, especially on Jarvis's side. We had a good chat. It's quite a long one, this one. I just figured, hey, we've got Jarvis Cocker, so let's just get it all in there. Also, he is extremely funny and dry, and just a good conversationalist. You obviously know who Jarvis Cocker is, best known for Pulp, but also a broadcaster and a writer and lots of other things. During lockdown, earlier on in the year, he released an album with his new band Jarvis. It's called Beyond the Pale, and I believe, and I will stand by this, I'm sure, in years to come, I think it features what is the best track released in 2020, called House Music All Night Long. We talk a little bit about that in the podcast, and a load of other nonsense, really. It's quite a rambling, loose conversation. So let's get into it. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for letting us get to 100, and hopefully there will be many, many more. Here is Jarvis Cocker, number 100 of a legendary podcast, Midnight Chats by Loud and Quiet. So we're recording this on a Monday. On Saturday, it was your birthday. Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I had a very good birthday, actually.
What did you get up to?
Cycled to Richmond Park, and I had a real desire to see some animals, but not in a zoo or something like that, because, we've been like animals in a zoo for the last couple of months. I wanted to see animals just wandering around doing their own business, and I remembered that there are deer in Richmond Park. So me and my girlfriend cycled down to Richmond Park, and it was brilliant, because as soon as we went through the gates, there was a big herd of deer just like waiting, like a kind of reception committee.
They knew you were coming. They knew that you wanted to see them.
Kind of, yeah. And so you're supposed to keep like 20 meters away, but I thought I've had enough of safe distance. I believe in it for humans, but with deer it's different. So I went, and I didn't get super close, but I kind of laid down near them.
There's a great photo on your Instagram of you with the deer, in fact, that I saw.
There you go. That's the nearest I could get.
Yeah. I went on holiday the week before last to Cornwall, and I did took a similar photo, but I was in front of some cow. It wasn't as glamorous. It was just some cows, but I was quite in there with them. And it did feel nice to be surrounded by animals and seeing some animals. Yeah,
I don't know why. I think it must be an instinctive thing, because we're having to think about every single human interaction. The idea of being an animal just wandering around in your herd or flock or whatever seems appealing. I think it came from something I'd seen on Instagram. A friend of mine was in Crete, and they were driving over a mountain, and then they had to stop because there were goats blocking the road. And then the goats came, and they were like putting the head inside the car and like looking, and for some reason I just thought, oh, that seems really nice, a kind of an encounter with nature that doesn't seem dangerous. That seems just pleasurable and pleasant. So I think that's what inspired it, really.
And how are you generally with birthdays? Are you a fan of birthdays? Do you run a mile from them? What's your relationship with them like?
I have been bad. Well, in the 3 weeks leading up to a birthday, I tend to get into some kind of dark mood, and I've always been like that. I mean, like, there was one birthday when I went to a graveyard. That was a long time ago. Honestly, that's true. It was, I think that was something like my 21st birthday or something like that.
That's a big one. That's a big birthday to be spending in a graveyard. But I think in a weird way, those milestone birthdays are sometimes the ones that kind of make you feel the darkest, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I generally get in a mood, and that's why this year was better, because I know that I've got that kind of tendency to go towards the dark side and get it mired down in thoughts about mortality and stuff like that, but I didn't go there this year, so I was kind of pleased.
Are you an easy person to buy gifts for?
I would say probably not.
No, I mean, I'm just thinking, what would I get you? What would I buy? I don't know. What do you do? A list? Do you do a list for people?
It's not Christmas.
I know, right? But my mum is like a real stickler for a list, and it's actually got to a point where, which sounds quite nice, but it's not actually quite. She's so organised about it. She's taken any of the fun out of it, where you send her a list, and we're one step away from her just putting some money into my bank account. That's how bad it's got. But she won't buy something without like without me telling her exactly what I want.
Okay, well, I suppose I can see the logic in that, but I don't know. I really like buying gifts for other people. I like that thing of thinking about someone and then trying to find something that really suits that person. Or, I mean, I don't know if I always get it right. Maybe sometimes I think I've come up with the perfect present and the person's thinking, what the fuck's he bought me here? But I like that idea, but I think probably I am a bit difficult to buy for because I'm quite particular, so I guess that's a bit intimidating when you come to buying a present.
Yeah, there's nothing more disappointing than having bought someone a gift thinking they're going to love it and being really excited about giving it to them, and then you can just tell when they're pretending that they like it more than they like it. Yeah,
but I didn't have to do that this year. It was a good birthday this year. At one point I had grandiose ideas for it because I was 57, so I came up with this Heinz concept. I thought, well, Heinz, their trademark is 57 varieties, so I thought, well, I'll invite people. That's one of the reasons why I'm down here in London. I thought, well, I'll come to London because there's quite a few people that I haven't seen for a long time because of the lockdown and everything, and restrictions seem to have been eased a little, so maybe we could meet out in a garden and we could have a picnic, and all the food on the picnic would be Heinz products. But then when I actually looked at what Heinz made, once you get past tomato ketchup, beans and tomato soup, it starts to get pretty rank really quickly, and you probably would have a lot of people being physically ill if they had to eat nothing but Heinz stuff for a whole meal. So I was quite lucky that they brought in the rule of 6 and kind of put paid to any idea of a social gathering.
Yeah, they saved your blushes for that because, and your guests. They saved your guests, really.
Yeah, actually, no one would ever have come to a party that I gave ever again, I think.
I'm just trying to think what else. I mean, I know the beans, ketchup, and the soup What I mean, what else? I can't believe.
You got salad cream is okay. Sandwich spread divides people. Some people like it. Some people say it looks like someone's been sick on a slice of bread. You used to have those things called toast toppers. They were really horrible. You're probably too young to remember that.
What's a toast topper?
Toast topper was a small tin, and you opened it, and then, as the name suggests, you would put it on a slice of toast and then put it back under the grill. So it was making a kind of pizza-like thing. But what used to happen was then you took it out from under the grill, and it would develop like a kind of skin on top of it, like you get skin on top of a rice pudding, and then you would bite into it, and this kind of molten lava, hot stuff would ooze through the breach in the skin and burn the roof of your mouth immediately. It was really horrible and really vile flavour as well, and that really did look like sick.
Okay, well, this is already an education for me. Toast toppers.
Yeah.
Do they still make that? They still make toast toppers? No,
I don't think. I mean, there are probably websites devoted to it, because you find that, don't you, with discontinued foods, you'll find they're still made in some weird country, and then people will be importing it. I think it's been discontinued, but maybe after this podcast is broadcast, we'll find out differently.
Yeah. So you were up in the Peak District for the majority of the last few months. Was that? I mean, that sounds like. Was that a nice place to be during the lock-in?
Yeah, for sure, because that's a place I've been visiting quite a lot. It's quite near to Sheffield. That's how I first got to know the Peak District, from going on family outings as a kid, which I hated at the time, but then in later life kind of came to appreciate. But yeah, I mean, it's the countryside, so you couldn't really tell that anything different was happening. It was funny. I realised that for a good 2 months, I saw more sheep than people, and that's definitely the first time ever in my life that has occurred. That I was hanging out with sheep more than other humans.
How are you generally with your own company?
I'm much better than I used to be. I used to hate it. As a kid and as a younger person, I couldn't stand to be on my own in a house. I would start to freak out, and I would just have to go out on any kind of pretext just to be with other people. I didn't like to be left alone with my own thoughts. I don't know. I just wasn't comfortable with it. So, but I've come a long way. I'm okay now. I think it's a thing that you really have to grapple with, and I think it's because it's like it's basically like the foundation for all your other kind of social interactions. If you are okay with yourself, then it's going to make your social interactions better. Because, like I say, when I was younger, I would just kind of go out just because I couldn't bear to be on my own. So you're starting off your interactions with other people on a kind of slightly desperate note there. Like you would just want them to distract you from yourself. Whereas if you can handle yourself okay, you might actually go out and just have fun with people.
Sure. Did you have a lockdown routine? What would a typical day-to-day thing have been? It's kind of a bit different now, I guess, because we're kind of out of it a little bit, not fully out of it, but there was that period at the beginning where it felt like every day was exactly the same. Did you have a continual routine that you would just do every day and like just repeat?
Well, it's funny you should say that. It does seem like a long time ago now, doesn't it? Or it seems like another era. I did realise at the start that I needed some, not particularly a total routine, but I think it was hard to kind of concentrate at first. I think because we're all used to just wandering around and, check something on your phone, then go somewhere else. Over the last few years, we've got used to kind of having this kind of pecking at things attention span, and always kind of moving around. And as you said, being stuck in the same place, suddenly time, the shape and feel of time altered. And at first I found that my mind, it was still trying to peck, but there was nothing to peck at, because it was just, you were just there in one place. So that felt very, it was slightly disturbing. So I did try and write a little bit of a timetable, even though I knew I wouldn't stick to it. I think if you've got a timetable, then at least if you got distressed, you could walk into the kitchen and look at the piece of paper that you'd sellotape to the wall and think, oh yes, it's 2:00, I should be going for a walk now, or whatever. I guess I was lucky in that if you're a person who works in the creative arts, then you can do stuff like I started reading some stories and posting them. I started doing discos on Saturday nights. I just kind of, and also there was a record that was about to be released, so I was doing like 2 Zoom calls a day. So that kind of meant that I was kind of socializing as well. So I was really lucky, actually. I didn't have to do a lot of, that zombie shopping where you have to stand outside Waitrose in a queue with them and all that stuff.
With everyone, yeah. I was going to ask about the Zoom thing. Are you feeling zoomed out at this point? I mean, we're talking on Zoom, but I know it's one of those things that if you do too much of it, you get to a point where you need a break. You're like, I can't speak to another one through Zoom right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about that, because I find it quite tiring. That's what I found, and I was trying to work out why I felt tired when all I'm doing is sitting on a settee talking at a computer. But
a friend of mine tried to explain to me why he thinks it makes, what his theory behind why it's so tiring, and it was about how you're interacting with someone where you're just focusing on their head and shoulders. And if you were to do that in real life, it would be very strange and bizarre to just be staring at someone like you and I are right now. It's actually quite intense, and it kind of takes its toll. And that was what, I don't know if there's anything to that. It sounded sensible and clever when he told me.
I suppose so, but
you're not sure.
Yeah, I do think it's something to do with that it feels, you can see someone, so it feels like you are having a conversation. But for instance, if I want to have eye contact with you now, I'm looking at your eyes, but that means that I'm not looking in the camera. If I really wanted to have eye contact, I'd look in the camera like that, but that feels really weird. So there's all these things where it's just a bit off. So I think that's what makes it a bit disturbing, because your brain is trying to find out what's really going on. And I think also things to do with timing as well, because it's not so bad in this situation where it's just a conversation between two people. But like, for instance, towards the beginning of lockdown, we had a Zoom meeting for the people in the band, and we were all talking, and then we thought, oh look, we're all on the same Zoom, let's try and play a song. And then as soon as we tried to do that, we realized that everything was out of sync, because everybody's internet connections would be at different speeds, and we were at different distances to each other. So that really pointed out the fact that it wasn't like being in a room with people where you can just play a song without thinking about it. There are all these weird latency and time lag things, which you're probably not consciously aware of them, but they are making that interaction a little bit more strange, and therefore a bit more tiring to engage in.
Sure. Did you do any Zoom quizzes with friends? That was a thing for a while.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, because I've thought about that, because I should have been all over that, because I historically have been a big lover of quizzes. I used to again at parties. This is again maybe why people don't come to my parties, but I often would have a quiz as part of the party. I used to like doing my own version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. One year we did Mr. and Mrs. I don't know if you know that quiz.
I know it. Yeah.
So we used to do Mr. and Mrs. So yeah, I would have thought that I would have loved quizzes, but I think I only took part in one. How about you?
You know, I'm still in one now. I started doing one with my brother. My brother set one up with his in-laws and invited me and my wife and my mum, and we were doing it every Saturday night. And that got a bit intense. We've gone down to every other week now, and I don't know if it's ever going to end. Like, I feel like we're kind of stuck in this now, but I mean, I'm enjoying it. They might be listening to this. I am enjoying it, everyone. But that is very tiring. I find actually the quiz thing quite exhausting, because we do it where we all write a round each, and then you're the quiz master for your own round, and then you all sit out of that round.
All right, yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So it's not like you search online for a quiz or get it from a book. You actually have to devise it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. We make it ourselves. So that's quite fun, but then it turns out that's actually quite time consuming.
Yeah.
When we did the feature for the mag a few years back, one of the things that we spoke about was TV. And I remember you saying that you watched so much TV when you were a kid that these days you don't really watch that much TV. In fact, when you're in a hotel, if there's a TV in there, you'll cover it up or put it away so you don't have to see even the dead TV in the room.
Yeah.
Have you I was wondering if you've lapsed back into TV through this time.
You're not working for the TV licensing agency.
Is that a no comment?
Sure. No, it's just I keep getting letters through the mail saying they're going to come and check me that I ain't got a telly. I don't own a telly. Just want to go on record there.
All right.
But occasionally, well, the one thing that I've watched, I haven't really watched much TV. I have stuck to that. I do think that I've had enough TV to last me my whole life. But then my partner's daughter was talking about how she was watching The Sopranos during lockdown. And we realised that I've never ever seen The Sopranos. And all the DVDs were in a cupboard somewhere. So we are watching The Sopranos. We started and we're... Please don't tell me what happens.
I've not seen it. I've been meaning to. I'm like you. I'm really late to it, and I've got it, and I've been meaning to watch it.
All right. Well, I'll tell you, it's worth it.
Okay. How far in are you?
We're approaching the end of season 4.
Right. Okay.
And so we're over halfway. Yeah, it's really good. I have to say. I don't know why. Obviously, it's quite old now. I mean, that's one of the good things. It doesn't really seem very dated. I don't know how they've really... I suppose we were lucky it was made just as mobile phones came in. In fact, they kind of come in during the series. And computers are there, but like really clunky computers, but they're there. So it's almost like it just managed to get those things in so it doesn't seem hopelessly dated.
Yeah.
It's good. It's really good. I mean, as for why I didn't watch it at the time, I can only think it's because the theme tune is a song by the Alabama 3.
Yeah.
Woke up this morning, found myself a gun. It goes like that. And there was a guy in the Alabama 3 who just always used to bug me when I was out. Like, it was always kind of bend my ear, drunk. When I was out, and it really, really irritated me. And so I think maybe when I knew that they'd done the theme tune, I thought, there's no way I'm watching that program.
I was thinking yesterday when I was thinking about the fact we're going to be talking today, it reminded me that the last live show that I've been to was your live show when you played on the 2nd of March in a club in Canning Street, next to Canning Street Station, basically, wasn't it? I can't remember the name of the place, but
Steel Yards, that
was it.
Yeah.
It was just before the lockdown started. Like there was murmurings of it, but that's the last time I've seen any live music other than on screen, a few live stuff on screen and stuff. But I think it was the day that House Music All Night Long came out on that day. Or the video of it came out on that day, maybe?
Yeah, it was. That was why we'd organised the concert, because and actually the records arrived that day, and I was really excited. I spent most of my time backstage taking pictures of the records because they were there, you know. But yeah, I think it was maybe a fortnight before the lockdown came into effect. So yeah, people were talking about it, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. You didn't catch it that night, did you?
I didn't. No. I'm touch wood. I've been okay. I've not.
Yeah.
I've not caught it.
As far as I know, you know, none of us in the band got it. I haven't heard of people getting it from there. So, yeah.
It was great. It was great to. It seems like so long ago. It seems like forever ago, which is maybe why I forgot that. Oh yeah, that's the last gig I went to. I like that you did it in that club as well. I'd never been there, but I've certainly been to clubs like that when I grew up. It was the kind of nightclub that people go to after work in the city. It's like in the Arches for anyone that's not been to the Steel Yard. But it was a great show, and it was nice that it was the last one. Did you ever go to clubs like that type of after work leaving do clubs?
Now, I mean, the reason we had it there was because the record that was coming out was House Music All Night Long. I kind of wanted it to be like a place that you could imagine a rave to happen. At one time, we were looking at the arches underneath Waterloo Station, which are a bit more kind of scuzzy. Yeah. So that place, because it was a school night, you know, it was a Tuesday, I believe. So we could, because at first I was thinking, oh yeah, we could do it like a back in the day where people have to kind of go and meet a guy at a chip shop with his mobile phone, and he tells you the next place you have to go to, you know, because that's what it used to be like back in the rave days. You would get coordinates to meet someone at a service station, and then they would tell you the next part of the journey. And finding the actual party was a big part of the night out. So I was thinking maybe it'd be nice to do something like that, but then, as I say, because it was a Tuesday and people probably wanted to get up for work the next day, we decided to do it in a place that had the look, because it was in the old railway arches, but it did have a bar and plumbing and toilets and things like that.
Yeah, well, I think that stuff was appreciated by the people that were there, to be honest.
Yeah, good.
Did you that world that you were just talking about, where you kind of, it was like a puzzle to find out where the rave was? Did you obviously did some of that back in the day? Did you do much of the rave scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why it stayed with me so vividly, because it was just after I'd moved down from Sheffield to London. So I moved down to go to St Martin's in September 1988, and the acid house scene was going there, warehouse parties and stuff. And the first one I went to was in May 1989. We got a ticket. Well, it's like it says in the Pulp song, Sorted for Ease and Whiz. That's basically a documentary representation of what happened. You could buy tickets from this strange flat in Camden Town, and there was a coach that went from Soho Square at 10 o'clock. And I'd kind of left Sheffield. I used to go to there was like a really bad kind of indie nightclub in Sheffield that I'd been going to twice a week for 5 years since I left school. And when I left Sheffield, I thought, well, that's it. You know, I've done my time in the clubs. I'm going to get serious now. I'm going to learn. all this kind of thing. So I wasn't intending to have a nightclub experience once I got to London, but as luck would have it, this scene was in full swing, and some friends said, "Oh, you've got to come and see it because it's really amazing." And so I kind of went, not with particularly high expectations. I'd been kind of badgered into it. But once I got there, and we were in this aircraft hangar with a big wheel outside and giant platforms and lasers and smoke and everything, I thought, oh shit, this is what I always wanted nightclubs to be like, some kind of really sci-fi experience with people dancing all night and all that kind of thing. And so I kind of got hooked into it, yeah.
Mm. Well, the track House Music All Night Long, because it was released back then, 2 weeks before lockdown, as you say, it kind of soundtracked a lot of my early lockdown, that song. I even went roller skating to that song, and I
really?
don't roller skate, but I have some roller skates and I went out on them. That's how powerful your song is.
Well, yeah, thanks. That's as far as I know, you're certainly the first person I've heard of who's roller skated to that song. So I take my hat off to you.
It's the perfect roller skating song, and because of the lyrics of that song, a lot of people, I think, thought that you must have written it. It was about lockdown, and you wrote it in lockdown. So friends of mine certainly said that when they first heard it. It was like, oh, has this just been written about the current situation? But it wasn't, was it? It was written.
No.
Way before.
I mean, that's the strange thing, really. Emma, the woman who plays the violin in the band, a friend of hers got COVID quite early on and had to self-isolate. And she was the first person who pointed out the fact that the lyrics seemed to be about that experience of just being stuck in a house, not being able to go out. But yeah, the song had been written like a year and a half before. It was all about a weekend when I was stuck in London on my own, and I was jealous of some people who'd gone to there's a festival in Wales called Houghton. Have you know that? It's like a dance music festival.
No, I don't know that.
All right, it's supposed to be really good, and some people I knew had gone, and I was stuck in London, and all my friends weren't around, and I was feeling a bit sorry for myself. And to kind of distract myself from that, I went and got a keyboard out of the basement and started playing, and then that's when I came up with the tune for it. And I guess because of the circumstances, that the idea of me being stuck in a house on my own, feeling jealous about people dancing to house out in Wales, there's those two connotations of the word house kind of gave me the lyrics. So that's where all that kind of stuff about claustrophobia and all that kind of stuff come from. But yeah, it just kind of weirdly came out. Yeah, seeming like it was written with lockdown specifically in mind.
The other thing that is kind of strange timing, I guess, with like the new band and lockdown happening, is that although the album came out during lockdown, the band is kind of a live band, isn't it? More than it is a album studio band. Like, you hadn't planned to like make a record and then go and tour that record. You are like a live band first and foremost, and that's how you kind of want to experience it. It must be really annoying that you've not been able to play it. You've not been able to like do that side of it. In fact, the only thing people currently have is the album.
Well, I don't know whether it's annoying. I mean, it's annoying for everybody who's in a band, that concerts aren't allowed. It was, I mean, if anything, in one way, I was kind of pleased that we'd made the record in the way that we'd made it, because, as you say, the band was formed basically as a live thing, and at one point we thought we never would make records. We would just play these songs that we'd written, and the songs would change over time, and if people were interested, they would have to come to a concert to see what was happening. And then, I don't know, I guess I can't help it. I was brought up in the age of records, so I kind of do start thinking about that kind of thing. We ended up making a record, but a lot of the versions of the songs that are on the record, the basic takes were made during live concerts. So there are 2 that were recorded in a cave up in the Peak District.
Was that cave called the Devil's Arse?
Well, I prefer to call it Peak Cavern.
Oh, okay.
Some people do call it the Devil's Arse. They changed the name to Peak Cavern when Queen Victoria visited it in the late 1800s.
Right.
And I'm not really into Victorian values generally speaking, but I am in that case because I don't like the idea of playing in an arse, devils or not. But yeah, and then there was another song we recorded at the Primavera Festival in Barcelona. So I'm glad that we did it that way because, as you point out, there's no way to do that now. There are no concerts happening, so we kind of took advantage of it while it was there. And it must come back. I think like I've only seen one concert during lockdown. I went to there's a place in Peckham called Peckham Levels or something, I think it's called, and there's like a bar on the top floor of there, and there's an arts place called Bold Tendencies, and Hannah, the woman who runs that, was determined to start putting events on again. So I went along, I think it was around the beginning of July. There was a cello player and his sister who played the piano, and they played some classical music, and everybody was sat on chairs at safe distances, and it's in an old multi-story car park, so it's got a lot of ventilation, so it was a safe environment. But just to be sat there, even in that kind of slightly constrained situation, just the fact that you could see someone playing it right there before your eyes, it wasn't coming down a live stream, it wasn't pre-recorded, was a really great thing. It was a really beautiful feeling to witness that and be part of it. So my hope is that this kind of hiatus will have made people realize how much they do like those live experiences, and I think that maybe we'll have a bit of a flourishing of live events when we're allowed to do them again.
Yeah, definitely. There's one track on the album. Well, house music is obviously the one that I love. As I say, it made me roller skate. But yeah, there's also a song on the record that I really like called Swanky Modes. And one of the reasons I like it so much is because it's about my neighbourhood where I live now. I believe, anyway, because I live just off the Camden Road, which is mentioned in the first line of the song. And you used to live around there, right? It is like a song about a time and a place that you lived in. When was it? When was that written? When was it that you were in that kind of area?
Well, that's one of the mysteries of songwriting, actually, and I've wondered about this because the events that I'm describing in that song happened basically 30 years ago. Towards the end of my time at St Martin's, I was living in a housing co-op place on Georgiana Street. I don't know if you know where Georgiana Street is. It's like it's just off the Camden Road, but it's there's a garden centre at the end of the road.
I do know it, yeah.
Do you know where that is? Yeah,
okay. That's near my house, yeah.
All right, so there was a housing co-op there, and I'd been on the books for ages, and then eventually got offered a room in a shared house there. It was quite a random household. The main guy who lived there was a drug dealer, but he was in prison at the time. But all his friends were there, and so they tried to put me off taking the room in the house. So when I went round for a viewing, they were all just kind of really wasted and doing like disgusting things. Like a guy started trying to fuck the settee. So I guess they thought that I would be appalled and just say, I can't live here. But
you didn't?
I just thought they're just trying to put me off. Fuck that. I've been waiting for the flat for ages. And it had always been my dream to live in Camden. When I first moved down from Sheffield, Camden was one of the few places I'd been to in London. And I just thought it was like the coolest place probably on the planet, you know. They had shops that sold records and clothes and badges and things like that, you know. I just thought it was great. And I tried to get a flat there when I first came, and that fell through, and I ended up squatting for quite a long time. But I eventually got my Camden flat, and that would be around 1990, 1991.
Sure. So then were the housemates, did they behave themselves once you did move in, once they realised we've not scared this guy off, he's moving in? How were they after that? Did they calm down?
Not much. And there wasn't much settee fucking after that, but it was still... Well, it just wasn't very pleasant living in a house, because the guy got out of prison quite soon after that, and so whenever I came back home, there were just lots of random people waiting to score in the living room. So that's not the most convivial, living circumstances.
No,
but I lived there for a while, and there was a shop just up the road called Swanky Modes, which was a woman's clothes shop. I've since found out it's kind of known in certain circles because it was completely run by women. The clothes were designed by women. The women ran the shop. I think one of the women who started the shop is now lecturing at St Martin's. So,
okay.
But as I say, why suddenly these events? Because I didn't live in that place for that long. Maybe I lived there 5 or 6 months. So it's quite weird that suddenly all that story that's related in that song would just suddenly float to the surface of my consciousness 30 years later.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things I like about being a songwriter, really, that you end up kind of giving life a narrative in a way, because I do believe that really life is pretty random, but sometimes your mind will weed out stuff and remember certain things and forget other things, and it's kind of like it kind of writes you a life story.
Yeah.
And I've got a memory now of that time. Maybe I would have ended up totally forgetting about Georgiana Street, but I never will now because I've written a song about it.
Did you leave Camden before before Camden became the Britpop thing? Were you out by the time that it became cool in that way, or were you still there when things kind of kicked off?
No, I was by the time of the Good Mixer and all that. I was South London by then. I was Peckham.
You'd gone south of the river.
I'd gone south of the river.
That made me think of another thing that I've always wanted to ask you, and I'm sure you've been asked this before, so I apologize if this is a really boring question. But I think there are still a lot of people who don't necessarily realize that your first record came out in 1983, because obviously Britpop was so much later than that, 10, 12 years later. How did being in a band in the early 80s compare to being in a band in the mid 90s?
Well, that's a difficult one because, like you say, there's over 10 years between them. And also, when the band was there in the 80s, I'd just left school. I started the band when I was at school and then carried on. And I was just kind of learning how to do it then. It was a thing that I'd wanted to do since I was a little tiny kid. So it kind of ended up not working out, and that's why I eventually left Sheffield, because it was like my dream had gone. It's very sad, this part of the story. So it's like, you know, I could just see it wasn't going to work out. Sheffield was a pretty depressed place at that time in the mid-'80s, you know. It was Thatcher's Britain. You know, people who didn't live through that can only guess at the horrors that happened during that time. And so when I moved to go to London, I kind of thought that was the end of that. It was a new chapter. But in a similar way to what I said earlier about how I thought that my disco days were behind me, and then I got involved in raves. When I moved down to London, I don't know, there was a friend who'd already moved down from Sheffield a year before, and he joined the band. And even though the band wasn't really playing, it was kind of comforting to have it as an idea. And then with the going through the rave experience and stuff like that, and then towards the end of college, we just got asked to play a concert and played a concert, and it felt different. It felt like people actually liked it. Maybe I was a bit more relaxed about it, because I think probably the biggest difference, I suppose, thinking about it now, is that when I was in Sheffield at the beginning of the 80s, that was it. It was like my whole life depended on it, and that's why I took it so badly when it didn't seem to work out. When I did it again in the 90s, it was like I'd done college. I wasn't really expecting so much of it, and then it just started to happen. So I think the lesson that I took from that was don't try too hard.
Yeah, maybe you wanted it a bit too badly. When you were at college and studying at college, before the band did then start to happen again, was there something you were going to do when you left college that wasn't music, that you had? Were you going to be an artist, or what was the plan?
Well, I've been really lucky in my life in that I've never really made very serious plans. I've always tried to follow my instincts, really. And I made some films at college. They weren't particularly good. I kind of thought maybe I would like to make a film eventually. I'd done a few videos, like whilst I was at college, some friends from Sheffield started the Warp label, and some of the earliest tracks that they released, I made the videos for those, along with another guy, Martin Wallace, that I was at college with. And so I thought, well, maybe I could be a promo director. You've got to remember, in those days, people spent like, I don't know, 50 grand on a video or stuff like that. You know, it was like, there was that guy, Tim Pope, he was always going off to the Amazon and shooting The Cure, like floating down the Amazon in a canoe or something like that. You know, I thought, well, that would be all right. That wouldn't be so bad as a career. I'd still be involved in music, but I'd be in a different aspect of it. So, but as I say, I hadn't really worked it out. And then around the time that I was leaving college, when I suppose I would have had to think a bit seriously about what I was going to do, we started playing concerts and people liked it. So I thought, oh, okay, fuck that. Let's go back to music then.
I've really enjoyed you mentioned it earlier, your discos from home. Have they been, was that down here in London, or was that when you were up in the Peak District?
No, that was in the Peak District. That was from our living room, yeah.
Those were really good fun. And you also did the stories, which people can still listen to. I'd encourage people to go back and listen to on your Instagram account, on like Instagram TV. You did, it was a Sunday night, I think, wasn't it? When you did Bedtime Stories?
Yeah, at 9:30 every Sunday I would release a new story, yeah. Because I thought, I mean, that was just because again, at the beginning of lockdown, I realised that I wasn't sleeping so well. I think a lot of people had that because we were in such a new situation. It was especially bad. I stopped watching the 10 o'clock news because I realised that was a real no-no, because you would watch the 10 o'clock news, then try and go to bed, and you'd have all the kind of apocalyptic images from it going through your head. So the series that I used to do for the BBC, the Sunday service, I would occasionally read stories, so I had a bit of a stockpile of stories. So I just thought, well, why not put them out? Because if I ever read a story to my partner, she's asleep within 3 minutes, which can be really irritating sometimes when you're reading a story, because you might not realize that the person's asleep until 10 minutes later, and then you just read into yourself. You feel a bit of a Burke. But so I think that my voice has a certain boringness to it, which can make people fall asleep, which I think is okay.
It's hard to tell, isn't it? Is it a compliment or is it an insult that they've fallen asleep? Does it mean you're boring? Does it mean you're soothing and calming?
Well, I prefer to think the second one, and I have made a thing of that, I suppose. Like the Sunday service was all about trying to create this kind of quiet, low energy, mellow zone that people could kind of lose themselves in if they'd been out on a Saturday night and were feeling a bit fragile or something. And then the other series I did for the BBC, Wireless Nights, was generally broadcast around 11 p.m. or 11:30. So again, I tried to go for that kind of, almost like a hypnotist does. You talk in that voice like this, and you feel you're feeling very sleepy, and then, because I like, that's basically what I use the radio for a lot. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I did it last night, so I woke up about 4 a.m, and I hate that thing of lying there and then you start thinking of one thing and then another, and then behind that you're thinking, go back to sleep. But the more you think that to yourself, the harder it gets. So I generally will go downstairs and put the World Service on and lie there and just, I'm not even really listening to what they're talking about, but it's just there's a human voice there talking, and somehow that helps with feelings of loneliness or whatever, and just kind of, usually within kind of 20 minutes or so, I'm back asleep.
You're done. What about podcasts? Do you listen to many podcasts?
I don't listen to that many podcasts. I know they're the new thing, and I know this one is legendary.
Yeah, thank you.
No, it isn't really through choice. It's just, I occasionally I've listened to audio books or something. The thing is, I'm looking for something that I don't have to kind of stay awake to hear the end of.
Yeah.
I'm looking for something that just helps me drift off.
Yeah, I really like Radio 4 did a series called Slow Radio. Have you listened to that? And it's kind of sound recordings, really. It's like of somebody walking through a forest or a trip down the Amazon in a canoe, just the sound of that. And that's great for falling asleep too.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Well, I think, that's a very kind of essential function that radio or podcasts and things can provide. So I'm personally not insulted if people fall asleep whilst listening to me. I like it. It means I take it as a compliment. It means they feel safe and relaxed.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You must have been. Have people asked you to host your own podcast? You must have had people say that to you, because you have a broadcaster's voice, dare I say.
Well, that's very nice of you to say so. I mean, when I'm talking, then my broadcaster's voice like this. I haven't. No. I could do. I'm sure if I wanted to. And I'm still doing the. I think there is going to be another series of Wireless Nights, and I do like that one, because for people who might not have heard it, it's really just a way of checking up on the things that people do at night times, and that can vary from, we had a guy who went out night swimming, just like to go swimming off Dungeness in the night time, and he wore like a waterproof microphone so he could kind of talk about his experience. And then another time I was like a night watchman in an office building. Actually, office buildings wouldn't be much different to how I saw them in the night, because they're all deserted now. But it was quite weird to be in the centre of London in this big building with no one else in it but me. So all things like that, things that take place during the night. We once were in a power station with the people who were looking after the national grid and stuff like that. So for me, that's great, because I'm always curious to know what people are up to. It's a way of me eavesdropping without, getting arrested for it. So, I like that show, and because it's broadcast at night, we try and weave the stories together, so it's kind of like something that you can drift off to. And I do believe that if you fall asleep with the radio on or with a podcast on, I think that information in some way does kind of go into your dreams as well. You're kind of absorbing it in some kind of way.
Well, Jarvis, thanks so much for talking to me. You have actually been our 100th guest.
Really?
So thank you.
Well, you know what? I'm very honoured by that.
Yeah, you're our star guest.
Well, thank you. Oh, sorry, my alarm was going off there. That was like a celebratory alarm that was going off. Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, and if you're asleep now whilst you're listening to this podcast, congratulations.
Anyway, good night.